Hello, greetings, and salutations. Welcome aboard my podcast. I am Jason with Jay's Paradise Travels. I'd like to thank you for tuning into this week's episode. Today I'm going to be talking about my experience with the Dallas Stars. This was a part of a three-game trip that I took back in 2022. A couple of the games that I had seen already, or well, a couple of the games that I had seen on that trip I'd already have talked about in previous podcasts. That would be the Dallas Cowboys and the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Now I'm finally finishing that trip, talking about it with this podcast with the Dallas Stars. Before I get into it, though, and tell you about my experience, I want to do a little housekeeping to get that out of the way. First off, if you would like to go on a trip, perhaps you'd like to go see a game, maybe the Dallas Stars, or if you'd like to go on a vacation, such as a cruise, which is my specialty, and you'd like to reach out to me, there's a couple ways to do so. One of them is through social media. I have two accounts, one on Facebook and one on Instagram. They're both the same handle, Jay's Paradise Travels. That is Jays. There's no apostrophe in that. Jays, Jay's Paradise Travels. You could reach out to me through that, or you can reach out to me through email. My email address is j.paradise_travels@gmail.com. jay.paradise_travels@gmail.com. Feel free to reach out to me in either one of those ways. All right, now that we got that out of the way, let me go ahead and tell you about my experience seeing the Dallas Stars. Again, this was part of a 3-day trip that I took. It was over like the Thanksgiving Day weekend kind of thing. I had flown into Dallas on Thursday, which was on Thanksgiving Day, and me and my friend Corey, who had driven up from Houston. He was a good friend of mine that I've known for many years, and we had seen some games together. He knows my hobby. He's gone with me to some games, and we had talked before. I had looked at the schedule and noticed that I could hit these three teams during this weekend. And I called him, asked him if he'd be willing to do it. It worked out, so I was able to fly in to Dallas on Thursday. He picked me up. We went and saw the Dallas Cowboys on Thursday, stayed the night in a hotel, and had our Dallas Stars game the next day on Friday. And then the following day, we did the Texas Tech Red Raiders. I went home on Sunday. So that was what the trip consisted of. Again, for the podcast, if you want to hear about the Dallas Cowboys, my experience with that, and my experience with the Texas Tech Red Raiders, I have some other podcasts that talk about those. Feel free to check those out. This podcast today I'm going to be talking about is that Dallas Stars. So to start everything, I had already was in Dallas. I had come in the day before. He had drove up from Houston. I used to live in Houston. I lived there for about 5 years. That's where I met him. We've been good friends. And even since then, I've kept in touch and been good friends ever since. He drove up from Houston to Dallas, picked me up, and he was the one that was driving that time. And we stayed together in hotels. The Friday of the game was a night game. So we had all day um, that we were together. So what were we gonna do? Well, we had some stuff that was planned with some of his friends, which ended up being really nice. That night before, we had just kind of hung out, and I don't remember what we did for breakfast, if we went out for breakfast or what we did exactly for breakfast, to be honest with you. Um, but I remember we could, sleep in and just kind of chill and whatever. And eventually, we went over to his friend's house. No one that I had ever met before, and they were closer. They weren't exactly like downtown Dallas, but they were kind of in that vicinity of it. I want to say maybe just on the outskirts of it somewhere. And the friends were really nice. They had a really nice house. And they were hosting a bunch of people that day, some of their own friends and their own family. They were coming in from all over. My friend Corey knew him from when he was young, and had grown up knowing them, and then he knew their kids when they were young, and now they're grown up and married. And I know what that is like. In all honesty, I know what it's like to see a kid who maybe you used to babysit. I used to babysit, and now they're grown up and they have their own kids, and it's so weird to me. It makes me feel old. I'm not gonna lie, and I don't have kids. So to see kids have that I knew as kids have their own kids, it just makes me feel old. So I know what he was going through with that. And then this family was like family to them. I obviously didn't have that emotional connection with them at the time because I had just met them, but I was happy to be a part of it and kind of be included in the family for a day. Like I said, a very nice, generous family, as well as their friends and family that were there that day. So I was happy for him being able to be a part of that and go there and hang out with him. And of course, because it's a weekend that's going to include a lot of football, they had a lot of college football games going on that they had it in their living room. It was kind of an open floor concept with their living room and their kitchen. A lot of food. They had a ton of food. And what was fantastic was it was all so delicious. There's so much of it, and that was just like the appetizers in a way. They weren't even they hadn't even made their full meal because they wanted us to eat something before we went to the game because by the time the actual main course was ready, we would have already had left. So they made all this food ahead of time so that we had stuff to eat. It was wonderful. And for those of you that know me, man, I love to eat, and they really knew how to do it right. Anyways, they had this like open um, floor concept where it was the living room and the kitchen and the dining room kind of all open together. They had a nice TV out there, but then they had this beautiful porch area right in the back, and they had another TV out there, and it was covered, which was good because it was kind of a rainy day that day. That was covered. They had a nice yard in the back you could see, and it was just really nice. He had this. It was the first time I ever seen it. The husband had like a bike that was motorized. It wasn't a motorcycle. It was a motorized bicycle, which was very unique. First time ever riding one. And I got to ride it for a little bit. That sucker can go. And it's been a while since I rode a bike, just in general. And first time riding a motorcycle, having difficulty talking here, a motorized bicycle. It was a pretty cool experience. After a while, I was like, all right, better slow down here. I don't want to, knowing me, klutzy as I am, I'll hit like a rock and go flying or something like that. Just be pretty bad. But that was pretty cool, being able to hang out with them, and it was enough food to definitely hold us over. I don't recall getting anything at the game later on. I don't think I needed to. They were so generous with it. And one thing that was really cool was they had this like candy dispenser. It was about maybe yay big, and there's three different slots for it. And at the bottom of it, kind of like when you put a quarter in a candy machine and twist it, and it comes out of that little chute. They had three of those, and I thought that is perfect because in my home, so I'm Greek. I like to host. I like to have people over, and I like to have stuff to give them to eat. That's just how Greeks are. Um, and for our wedding gifts, someone had given us these canisters, which I was glad about because someone else had the canisters from before it had candy. This was years ago. And I remember getting the candy. And I wanted that for my own home. So I eventually got those canisters. Well, they were kind of big and bulky, and they were always kind of hard to fill. Used them for years. But when I saw this thing, I was like, oh, that would be perfect because it's so perfectly organized and easy to get, and you don't have to like scoop it out or anything, which I was doing. So I was really excited about it, and ended up asking them where they got it. Where else? Amazon, of course. Uh, Eventually, sometime later, um, I actually reached out to them through Instagram to see exactly what it was, and they shared it with me. I was able to get it. I've had it in my home now for a few years. Let me see that. So that was back in 2022. I'm recording this in 2025, so I've had it for at least 2.5 years, and it's worked great for me. um, so that was all part of the experience. I love being able to meet them and get to see that Southern hospitality, just how friendly they were, inviting. They warmly welcomed me into the family, even though I was first time meeting them and uh, wasn't someone on their radar, but they knew my friend Corey was coming in, and I was going to be with them, so they gladly had me as well. It was a wonderful experience, and I just remember that Southern hospitality was something that wore off on me, rubbed off on me in a good way when I lived in Houston. I tried to bring that up when I moved back to Michigan. So we had a really nice time over there for that barbecue. And I think of, they're country people in a way. They're from the South. They had a country accent. They had not like overly thick, but that country Southern hospitality they had. Um, and getting the friends together and laughing and hollering and joking with each other, just a very lively atmosphere. And even though I uh, was, I wasn't quite as comfortable to begin with because I didn't know anyone yet. But as time went on, I was able to kind of come out of my shell and be a part of it too. Um, that was really nice. That was a great, great part of the day. And that was even before we even got to go to the game. Really enjoyed that. So, anyways, we did eventually leave in the afternoon sometime and started heading down towards Dallas. By the time we got to the game, it wasn't. I mean, it was definitely nighttime. It wasn't too late in the day, but it was a night game. I think the game was starting at like 7 o'clock or whatever it was. We got there early enough to be able to get to the game on time. I was happy about that. Definitely at night. Now, I'd been to this place before, so this was my second time going. It had been some years. This time, it was at night as opposed to the first time I went. Um, we got to park right next to the arena. I mean, like literally right next to it, which is really nice. I could even get out of the car, look through the parking garage opening on the side, and there's the arena. Um, it was nice to be able to do that. Parking, I don't think it was too expensive. I don't know how much we paid, but it was not, from what I remember, it was not astronomical as some parking places can be. Very easy access. Was able to just go down, and there we go. I was able to take some outside shots, even though I had taken outside shots before the previous time I had went. But the previous time was during the day. This time was at night. I still was able to get some shots of the place on the outside, which I always like to do. And then we went into the game. And at this point, it's nighttime, and it's Black Friday. At that point, day after Thanksgiving, it was Black Friday. Didn't get to go do any shopping or anything, but that was all right. And then on the way out, everything from what I remember was fine too. We're going to hit some sort of game day traffic afterwards too, but I don't recall it being anything too outrageous on our way back to the hotel. We had that uh, hotel the night before and that night. The next day, we were going to be checking out and going to a different hotel out in Lubbock, which was like a 5 hour distance away. But I grouped Texas Tech in with Dallas because it was the closest city with a major sports team that I could think of, um, and that's why I was able to group that all in together. So anyway, so that was the experience with that. Now, as regards the game itself, um, it was the Dallas Stars and they were playing the Winnipeg Jets. Which I've noticed here recently has actually become, I don't know if rival is the right word or not, but they've had some good matchups between each other. They've definitely have had uh, some good winning seasons as of late. They've played each other hard competitively. They've seen each other in the playoffs. So this game ended up being a pretty good game. Both teams were doing very well. They've been doing well since then. In the past, there may have been some down years with some of these teams, but in the last few couple of years, including that year I got to go, they did pretty well. That first period went back and forth, back and forth. Winnipeg would score, Dallas would score. Winnipeg would score, Dallas would score. It ended up being a 2-2 game at the end of the first period. 4 goals in one period is pretty good. I will always take that because sometimes you go to a game and it's like 1-0 in the third period, which can be fun too. But definitely, if I have a chance to see goals, I want to see some goals. I mean, hockey is fun when you get to see some goals. You get to hear the roar of the crowd every time the team scores. That is always nice. So yeah, it went back and forth, back and forth. Winnipeg, Dallas, 2-2 game at the end of the first period. One of them ended up being the power play goal. Jamie Benn scored the second goal for Dallas to make it 2-2. In the second period, though, the scoring had kind of subsided a little bit. Winnipeg did get a goal about 8 minutes into the third period to take a 3-2 lead, and that was it for the second period. No other goals were scored on that, which is fine. It still was a good game with or I mean, it's still exciting to be able to see. But yeah, just one goal in that second period. Going into the third period, though, we got to see a few more as well. Now, Winnipeg scored about 11 minutes into the third period to take a 4-2 lead, and they had a 4-2 lead for most of the game, the third period, I should say. And at one point, you're thinking, all right, this may be it for Dallas. But with 2.5 minutes to go, Jason Robertson takes over and ends up scoring a goal. Yay, good for them. 4-3, make it tight. And I was kind of excited, like, all right, we got they got a shot here. Even before then, before they scored, they were still putting on a lot of pressure. It's like, all right, they could do it. A two-goal lead sometimes can be tough to hold on. You get one goal, now you've cut it to a 1 point deficit, and you've got momentum on your side. There's a chance that you might be able to take that momentum, score again, and tie the game up. And sure enough, he did. Guess how much time was left when he scored? 20 seconds. Jason Robertson again scored it. They had pulled their goalie, got an extra skater out there, and it was an exciting atmosphere to be a part of. And then yeah, they were able to put it in to tie up the game, made it 4-4. And my friend Corey was having a great time, and the audience was super loud and rambunctious with it. It was pretty cool to be able to see the comeback. In overtime, 30 seconds in, Winnipeg Jets scored. Now with hockey, during the regular season, when you go to overtime, it becomes 3-on-3 hockey. That's how it's been now for the last few years or so, and I'm not sure how long, if they'll ever change that, or if they do, when they'll change it, I don't know. But right now, it's 3-on-3 hockey during the regular season. Playoffs, they go to 5-on-5. But yeah, it was 3-3. They're 3-on-3. Winnipeg ended up scoring a goal 30 seconds in, which happens. There's plenty of open ice. They won the game 5-4, and it was still a fun game. Dallas uh, was able to come back. They never had the lead. They were always fighting to tie the game. And ultimately, at the end, Winnipeg won the game 5-4. But they scrapped hard with it. Now, since then, I've noticed they've had their bouts with the Winnipeg Jets, and there's times that they've come out on top. Cool, good for them. But this particular game, Winnipeg had the upper hand pretty much throughout the game, and ended up finishing it. So 5-4, Winnipeg Jets beat the Dallas Stars, and that's okay. Uh, it was still fun to be a part of, and really, for that whole 3-game weekend, um, that was the only time that the home team lost. The Dallas Cowboys the day before had won. The next day, Texas Tech, who also won in overtime, they were playing Oklahoma. They had won as well. Again, feel free to listen to those podcasts on those games for more details on the experience with those. This was the only home team to lose on that 3-game stand that I got to go on with my friend Corey. Had a really good time though. Still enjoy the game. Still a good crowd. Really appreciated the atmosphere, which I'm always big into. And hockey always has a good atmosphere to it, which I'll talk about again in a little bit, because this was my friend's first time at a hockey game. The stadium itself, I want to talk about that. Now, they play at American Airlines Center, which also hosts the Dallas Mavericks. I had seen the Dallas Mavericks many years before that, and was able to do even a podcast on that. Feel free to check out my podcast about seeing the Dallas Mavericks. That was during the day. There was the Mavericks were playing the Heat. This time it was at night, and I saw the Stars play the Winnipeg Jets. The building itself hosts about 20,000 people, and I looked up the attendance, and it said 18,500, which I thought was a pretty good amount. That's a pretty full crowd. Again, I mean, you're doing it on a holiday weekend. It's a Friday night, and the Dallas Stars are a good team. The Winnipeg Jets are a good team, so that's going to command a good crowd. And sure enough, there was. And I looked around, and yeah, I definitely saw a good uh, size crowd on hand. Um, and it's in the South, which to me, hockey is more of a northern sport in all honesty, because it's ice, it's cold weather. The original 6 teams were from the north, but the NHL has expanded so much to the South, and uh, even with that, even though in the South football is probably king, and and hockey might not be like the number one sport, maybe not even number two or three, but despite that, the fans did show up, and they were pretty passionate about their team, which I appreciated, and it was nice. The building itself, I've seen, like I said, I've seen before, and I've mentioned this in the other podcast. I mentioned again, they have like this arch uh, outside on the building with their logo that I think is really cool. I like the look of that. I love arches just in general. Um, that's a pretty unique thing. I don't see too many arches on stadiums. And then inside, I mean, typical kind of stuff that you see inside, but I did think it was pretty cool. I don't think I got any pictures of it, sadly, but I do remember seeing that they had a lot of different displays, displays such as former players' jerseys, um, replicas of the Stanley Cup, and other trophies that have they've won over the years, and whatever else that they've had displayed. I just remember there was quite a few of that. That was pretty cool to see. I think my friend had taken some pictures by it as well. And the jerseys, I'm not talking about the jerseys that are up in the rafters because they did have stuff up in the rafters as well. I'm not talking about that, but other jerseys other than that. So that was kind of neat to see. I don't always see that in teams as well. They'll have stuff around the concourse, not always former jerseys or replicas of trophies that they've won. And then one thing that I thought was really unique, at one point we walked over this one area and you look down and you can actually see the lower level. It wasn't like you're walking on glass necessarily, which I've done that before too. Um, you're walking on glass, you see directly down. It wasn't quite that, but there you did have the ability to see down, and I'm not exactly sure what it, I mean, there may have been some kind of glass to it, but there was also other stuff involved in it. So it wasn't like this clear view of it, like you're looking through glass, but you could see down and you could see stuff going down um, underneath you there on the lower level. Thought that was kind of unique and interesting too. We got there early enough where we could walk around and take a look at some of the stuff. At one point, you kind of because we were up on the upper level. We walked around this one area, and then there ended up being from like uh, when you go from like the side to like maybe the say end zone behind one of the goals, there was an opening there, and we walked through there, and I remember walking through there, seeing that opening, um, being able to kind of look around. Even during the pregame, I think that's maybe when I took the pictures out there. During the pregame, they had like this big star uh, that the players came out through. Thought that was kind of interesting. But anyways, there's that opening. That's a little unique. You don't always see that in an NHL arena as well. So pretty cool to be able to go visit. Nice stadium. But of course, I always appreciate stuff like that too. And then just a bunch of miscellaneous things as regards either the trip or the team or what I saw. Yeah, that star was probably one of them. Not every team does that where they'll come out through some sort of they'll come out, but sometimes they just come out to the ice. Sometimes teams will have something like a shark. I think the San Jose Sharks has an actual shark mouth open. Well, the Stars had this big star that they came out through. As typical, their names are the Stars, and the Stars on the Texas flag. I think that's probably what they're named after. Oh no, you know what? Not necessarily. Come to think of it, because the Dallas Stars moved from Minnesota many years ago. I want to say it was probably 90s, early 90s, early to mid 90s, that the team was the Minnesota North Stars. They were up in Minneapolis, and then eventually moved down to Dallas. I was kind of young at the time, so I wasn't in the know of like why a team would move and the reasons behind it, but they did move, and they went from the Minnesota North Stars to Dallas. They dropped the North part and just became the Dallas Stars. Whether or not that had anything to do with the Lone Star on the Texas flag, because Texas and Texans are obsessed with their state, Texas, and they're obsessed with that star as well. Um, so whether or not that was part of the reason they became, instead of the North Stars, just the Stars. Also, they're not in the North anymore. Dallas is in the South, so maybe that was another reason why. Uh, well, whatever the case is, they're the Dallas Stars. And in fact, the Winnipeg Jets also too. They used to be the Winnipeg Jets, and then they moved over to Arizona, which has now moved to Utah. So even the Winnipeg Jets had initially had moved. Some years ago, an expansion team called the Atlanta Thrashers moved from Atlanta and went to Winnipeg and became the Winnipeg Jets. Different logo though. They didn't keep the same logo as the logo they had before. In fact, the Dallas Stars logo, which is now you see, I don't know if you can see on my shirt, a little D. Uh, that's kind of yeah, their star their focus now is like a D on top of a star. Before it used to spell out the Dallas Stars, and there was a big star on it, and the top point of the star is what made the A for the word stars. I kind of miss that old logo, but I'm kind of a retro guy in a way because I grew up rooting, being big into hockey when I was a young guy, so that's kind of what I remember. Um, which I'll talk about that in a little bit though, because there was something fascinating at the game about that. Anyway, so they yeah, they used to be the Minnesota North Stars. I remember that being referenced in the movie The Mighty Ducks. When I was a kid, I used to watch the Mighty Ducks movie. D2, I was really big into that, but the first one was the Mighty Ducks, and they were in Minnesota, and a lot of kids on the team in the movie like the Minnesota North Stars. In fact, I remember they even went to a game in the movie, and I thought that was really cool. Back then, when I was younger, going to a game was just I loved the thought of it. I loved going to a game. I still do, but as a kid, there was an excitement about it, and whatever. Um, so in the movie, when they actually went to the game and they saw the Minnesota North Stars, uh, I think they were playing the Hartford Whalers, which both teams are not in existence anymore. Well, Minnesota North Stars are the Dallas Stars, but um, they played that. That was in the movie, and then later on in the third movie, the country guy referenced how they weren't the Minnesota North Stars anymore; they were the Dallas Stars. Um, yeah. So, but back then, growing up, I remember um, Dallas was actually a really good team in the '90s. They had won a couple cups, at least one. I think they had two. And Detroit and Dallas actually had a pretty good, I guess you could say, rivalry. It wasn't on par with Detroit, Colorado, and the heated rivalry that was. But Dallas and Detroit did have um, a decent rivalry. They weren't in the same division, but they were in the same conference, and they met each other in the conference finals. I know in '98 they did, and Dallas actually this was so Wings had won the cup in '97, and in '98 Dallas actually had the home ice advantage in that playoff series, but Detroit ended up. I know they won a game one. I think it was like 2-0. I think Martin Lapointe scored a goal too in that game. Anyways, so they were good enough teams where they saw each other in the playoffs. And the Wings ended up winning that series and winning the cup, so they won in '97, '98. And I can't remember if it was in '99 that Dallas had won the cup, but they had, I think, like shortly after they won. It was like '99 or 2000, and I can't remember if they won a second one somewhere in there or not. In those that like late '90s, early 2000 time frame. But they have at least one under their belt, and I know I was able to take a picture of their banners, whether it was Stanley Cup or Western Conference champs, that type of thing. And then they have some of the players, their numbers are retired. So some of them I didn't recognize. I'll be honest, I didn't recognize some of the names. Um, but then others I did. One was Zubov. I remember his name. Lettinen, you're Lettinen. I remember him. And then the most famous of all was Mike Modano, who was their team captain for the longest time and had hailed from Michigan. I think the Red Wings even was able to get Mike Modano for maybe a year or two later on, much later on after he was older at that point. But yeah, he was from Michigan and he was a Dallas Star legend and helped them win at least one of those Stanley Cups, if not the second one. If there was a second one, my as we're going way back in the memory on that. I guess I could easily Google it, but I know there was at least one. I think it was with Eddie Belfour as their goalie. Um, yeah, so I was able to see that. That was cool. Again, just kind of nostalgic with that. It's interesting that to me, the Dallas Stars, who are somewhat of a newer team, new when I say newer, they're not from the 30s and 40s like the Wings or the Maple Leafs or the Canadians. Um, They're newer in the sense that they came around in the 90s. But that's when I grew up, and that's when I was 90s is when I was super die hard hockey fan and Red Wing fan. Um, so there was a little bit of nostalgia with it in that case. Um, and what made it even more so, referencing back to a few minutes ago, and I said I'll bring it back up again, was that night that I went ended up being 90s night. And that was like the coolest thing ever for me, as well as my friend Corey, because me and my friend Corey are very similar in age. Maybe a year or two apart, something like that, if that. We're very close in age. And so we kind of grew up in the same time frame. So when I got there, didn't realize that it was 90s night. One of the things that I saw when I got there was that they had on their scoreboard the game, the Dallas Stars versus the Winnipeg Jets, but it wasn't the logos that are current. It wasn't this logo for Dallas. It wasn't the logo that the Winnipeg Jets have has an actual airplane on top of like I think it's the Canadian maple leaf, if I remember correctly. Um, it didn't have those logos. It had their logos from the 90s. Like I said, the stars with the word stars and the tip of the star being the A, and it had the Winnipeg Jets was just it was like in a circle and it said Winnipeg and the word Jets, the J was a hockey stick, and it was it was pretty big. It also like made the part of the N in Winnipeg, the second N. And then there was a little plane that was next to the hockey stick and it was in a circle. That was the old logo. And I saw it there. And I was like, well, that's kind of interesting. That's the old logos. I just didn't think anything of it. I just thought, oh, that's kind of cool. They got the old logos. And then as time went on, we just kept hearing 90 song after 90 song after 90 song. And those logos were kind of pixelated. Pixelated in the sense of like, when I looked at it, I'm like, okay, maybe they're just not up to date with their scoreboard. I mean, I'm not sure why it looks kind of older. Oh well, I wasn't thinking much of it. But it was on purpose. It was to have that retro look, which the fact that that was when I was young and that's considered retro, I guess is kind of again making me feel old. Um, but they had that, and it was cool because it reminded me of an old Super Nintendo game that I used to have called NHL Stanley Cup, which was one of the hardest hockey games I'd ever played in my life. Scoring a goal was like impossible to do. It really was. But back then, the graphics were for that time super good, like a little bit of ahead of its time because I mean you were like right in up on the ice with the players, following them around. Most games had that aerial view where you were one end zone, one of the goalies was up here and one of the goalies was down here, and you're going up and down this way. That was most of the hockey games back then. This game, the NHL Stanley Cup, had it where I mean you're down on ice level with the players. It was a super hard game in all honesty, and almost very frustrating to play because you got checked all over the place. There was all these body checks. You could barely move the puck. It was hard to score. It was anyway. Most of the time, I think I just simulated games because it was so difficult. I think I finally figured out one trick to do it where I could score a goal, but then even that wasn't all the time. It was this weird little at a certain point at the blue line. If I flipped the puck up, it was kind of interesting. Anyways, but that scoreboard and the pixelated way that they were showing the old logos, it reminded me of that video game. Again, it was very nostalgic. It was very nostalgic for me. So my friend, when he got to go visit his friends, it was very nostalgic for him, seeing all of them, people he grew up with and knew for a long time. For me, going to this game was very nostalgic because it reminded me of the 90s when I was such a diehard Wings fan and such a obsessed with them, diehard just hockey fan in general. Could tell you all the players uh, from all over the league. Now I struggle with that. I don't keep up with it as much. So it was very nostalgic for me, and I really enjoyed it. And for my friend, it was his first time ever going to a hockey game. Me and him have gone to plenty of football games before, But this was my first time taking him to his first time going to a hockey game. He knew what hockey was, and even when he was younger, he told me he used to like rollerblade around his garage and think he kind of had a hockey stick, maybe he shot it around, something like that, but never had gotten into the sport really. And to me, if you go to a hockey game, the excitement level at a hockey game is way up here. If you watch it on TV, it can be exciting too, no doubt about it, especially playoff time. Playoff time hockey, that is some good watching right there. That is some good TV right there. But if you go to a game and you can hear the roar of the crowd. You can see how fast they're going in person. You hear all the sights and sounds of the puck being hit around and the skates on the ice, all that stuff, the Zamboni, all of it. If you're there live for it, the experience of hockey just goes up. Him going to that game made him a fan of hockey at that point. He wasn't necessarily before. But him going to that game actually made him like the sport. So much that he wanted to go take his wife to a hockey game, thinking that she'll like this as well. Now, whether or not he ever did get to do that or not, I don't know. But there's been times he's a friend of mine that I'll be honest, we don't get. It's not like we talk every day or every month even. In fact, we probably talk very few times throughout the year. Just kind of get busy in our lives. But he's a good close friend of mine enough where when I do eventually get to talk to him or get together with him, it's like we pick up where we left off before. There's no awkward so how's life treating you? And I don't know what to talk about kind of thing. Like sometimes you might feel with someone you haven't seen in a long time. There's none of that. We could just go right back into we're buddies, we're friends, and we've been hanging out this entire time. He's the one who introduced me to Shinerbach and ended up being one of my favorite beers because he that was his favorite beer. He introduced me to it. So I had that type of friendship with him, and I'm glad that he was able to like it. And going forward, he would even text me like something about hockey here and there. I'd tell if I was at a game and he wasn't there, I'd send him pictures. I sent him pictures last time I went to the Ottawa Senators game. He was like, "Oh, I'm so jealous." He ended up becoming a fan of it. He liked it. Now, whether or not how much he's kept up with it, I haven't asked him, but at least at that time, he really seemed to really enjoy it. Wanted to take his wife, and I don't know if they ever did or not. Hopefully, they did. And even if they didn't, maybe one day in the future they will. But I was really happy to be able to be with him there for his first ever hockey game. I was really excited about that. And the fact that it was 90s night was perfect. It was perfect that that his first game there was 90s because we grew up with it. So every time he heard a song he recognized, it just added to the experience for him, being like, I love it here. This is so fun. And then of course the excitement of the crowd and the excitement of the game. Again, it wasn't a 1-0 game, a 2-1 game. It wasn't low scoring. It was a high scoring game. It was 5-4 in overtime. That's 9 goals. 9 goals in the game. That's not bad. I will take that. I will definitely take that. So to add to that, and all of it made him really like it, and I'm glad that he was able to get it. At one point, I thought this was kind of, I don't know, a funny little story. It kind of made me feel good. But at one point, Dallas was on a power play, and it was winding down, and the goalie starts hitting his stick on the ice, just thwap, 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 thwap. And in my section, which me and my friend Corey, we're very talkative amongst each other, but we're also very inclusive. We're talking to people around us too. And again, it's the South, so not everyone is a diehard hockey fan in the South, right? So people that are around us, not everyone might know the ins and outs of the game or the team or the sport. Some did. Some had been a fan for a long time. The guy I was sitting by, he seemed to have been a Dallas Stars fan for quite a while, but the one that was next to Corey was like a college student, and she didn't know too much about it. Anyways, and then there's other people around, so we're kind of talking to everybody. Well, anyways, it was sort of silent in a way. We're watching the game, so end of the near the end of the power play, the goalie starts hitting a stick on the ice, whap, 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 and I can't remember if him or if it was somebody else that asked this, but he was like, "Why?" I think it was Corey because he still didn't quite know everything that was going on in hockey. I was kind of explaining some things throughout it too. So he's like, "Why is the goalie banging his stick?" And I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, that's his way of alerting the rest of the team that the power play is ending." Oh, and then I get this like collective, everyone around, like, "Oh, okay, I get like, oh." made me feel good. I taught some hockey fans, whether they were new hockey fans or older hockey fans, I taught them something new. It made me feel kind of good. So all in all, just a great time with my buddy. That whole weekend was just a great time in general. And that second day was the only it was a football hockey sandwich, football game, hockey game, football game. That's how we did in those 3 games. All 3 days were wonderful. I loved being able to go to the hockey game just in general because I love going to hockey games. They're so fun. I love being able to go with my friend Corey. I love that it was his first time and that I got to see the joy and excitement that I experienced with he got to experience it as well. It was 90s night. It was a great evening in that way. Dallas lost, but I'm not a diehard Dallas fan. I'm not a Dallas fan. I grew up, I'm a Wings fan, right? I was a Dallas Stars fan for a day. So bummer, for the one time that I was there that they didn't win, but I'm not losing any sleep over it. And be able to enjoy all of that and then the 2 football games. Great weekend. And this is the last podcast of that. And I know my friend Corey, when he had listened to those other podcasts, he was looking forward to hearing this one too. But I told him I need to get a shirt. And if you can believe this, when I went out to Denver, Colorado about a month or so ago and saw the Colorado Rockies and the Denver Nuggets, uh, I have 2 podcasts on both of those too. Feel free to listen to those. But when I went to go see them, I went to Goodwill and I was just looking around. I found a Dallas Star shirt, so I was like, "All right, let me buy it." Now I can go home and and do a podcast on the Dallas Stars. So I know he's looking forward to hearing this podcast as I'm looking forward to showing it. And I hope that you enjoyed the podcast as well. If you did enjoy the podcast, please like the video. That definitely goes a long way. All the things that podcasters need to keep their podcast going, I ask you to do. So please like the video. Please subscribe to the channel, Jay's Paradise Travels, and feel free to share it with others too. I am sharing what is my hobby, but is also part of my business too. And I want to be able to get my name out there to as many people as possible. I'd like for you to be able to be your personal travel agent. And if you want to go see the Dallas Stars, uh, if this sounds fun and exciting and you want to go see it, let me know. Or if you want to go on vacation, cruises are my specialty. I'd be more than happy to help you along with that. I'm trying to make this world a happier place, one vacation at a time. So feel free to reach out to me for any of these things. Again, you can reach out to me through social media. My Instagram as well as my Facebook is the same exact thing, Jay's Paradise Travels. There's no apostrophe in it. Make it easy, Jays, Jay's Paradise Travels. Or if you prefer to reach out to me through social media, or not through social media, excuse me, through email, my email address is j.paradise.travels@gmail.com. jay.paradise.travels@gmail.com. And on the social media, there are pictures that I do post of my trips. So feel free to look at those as well. But yeah, as regards the video, the channel, please like it, subscribe it, share it with others, and feel free to leave a comment too if you have an experience with the Dallas Stars. Um, maybe maybe they're your team and you have some good experiences with them. You got to see them. Maybe you remember something from the 90s like I did, some nostalgic thing that you'd like to share. Or maybe there's something not positive as well. Maybe you went there and you didn't like the nachos, or they got shut out when you went to the game, you or they beat your team, or whatever. Even if there's something that isn't positive, you feel free to relate it. All I ask is just keep it clean. This is a travel podcast, not a sports podcast. So if you hate them, don't start bashing them or their fan base or any other team or fan base. We're not looking for that. We're just looking for experiences. So just keep it clean if you do. But anyways, I want to thank you for tuning in again to this week's episode. I hope you liked it. I hope you learned something from it, took something away from it. And again, if it's something you want to go see or go do, feel free to reach out to me at Jay's Paradise Travels. Again, my name is Jason. Thank you, and I'll talk to you guys later. Take care. Bye bye.